If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to yWrite. Hi, welcome to yWrite. I'm your host, Angela Grout. And once again, thanks for tuning in to an episode of talking about writing, talking about why writers are writing, what they're writing, and hopefully it will inspire you to decide what you're going to write and why you should write your story. Today, I have a guest on the show who wrote a book that literally the topic's like happiness, humility, and we're going to talk to him about how he handwrote this book because it's really important to share the wisdom that we have. The gentleman that I have in today is a child of God like all of us. He has a mission in life to spread God's love, and he has uncovered the secret joy of practical humility. And I'm going to boast for him. He has studied Eastern religion and has 3 master's degrees, one in divinity, one in journalism, and one in social work. He is a psychotherapist with a private practice, and he's currently the pastor of Agawam Congregational Church. His name is Daniel Aaron Cohen, and Daniel has traveled the country as a teacher for all levels of schooling, as well as a journalist. And he studied at Columbia, Northwestern, Fordham. He became a preacher, and he was in Burlington, Connecticut, and now he is right here in Agawam, Massachusetts, where I am, at the church pretty much across the street from the studio, the Agawam Congregational Church, which I actually taught dance school at for about 20 years. So I'm really excited to talk to him. We definitely have a great connection. He is the author of It's Not All About You, and it's called the Happiness Through Humility series, and I want to welcome to the show Pastor Daniel Aaron Cohen.
Hi, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming in, and I did some boasting for you, as you said, because I'm like, 3 master's degrees. I mean, you've done a lot of studying between the journalism, the preaching, the teaching. You have a lot of experience there for writing. Mm-hmm. So did you always think you would write a book?
Well, when I was 6 years old, I did write a book. It was a book called Undersea Life.
Oh.
And basically not that different from this book in a way, because it was sort of a how-to book about which animals you could keep together, and there were jokes in there. And, this book also has a lot of sense of humor in it as well. So maybe you could see it, that's 54 years ago or so, 57
wow, so
years.
This book's been 54 years in the making. Wow,
not exactly, but yeah.
Well, you had the experience then. I have to share this book I read. I mean, it came to me, and it's quick read, but it's also can be a journey, a reading that's a journey, because you can kind of take each chapter and read it, digest it, sit back, wait a week, and read another one. I definitely, after I read about halfway through, I was like, this is a book that I almost would want to be like your daily meditation. Like you're going to read a chapter. You have, it's 217 pages, and I say it's 217 pages because you have 70
humility paths.
So it's sort of 70 chapters, right? I would say.
So, it's the 70 humility paths or mental happiness tools. Mm-hmm. So the book is laid out. It starts out with an introduction, which is about why I wrote the book.
Yeah.
And then there's a section on humility and what it is, and everybody sort of has a different definition of humility.
Yeah. So what is humility? I mean, why do we need a secret joy to practice humility? And I love the title because it's not all about you.
Right. So it's my definition of humility is that it's 3 things. That it's first putting yourself in perspective, which is not to think too high, too low, or too often of yourself. Mm-hmm. And by my definition, therefore, you can't be too humble. But that's because it includes not thinking too low of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's one part. But then there's 2 other parts of the definition. And the second part is accepting everything you don't like about life but cannot change. And the third part is being thankful for everything you do like. And those will be 2 other books that, and I'm working on the second book now.
Which, again, you have right here, that it's the Happiness Through Humility series.
Right.
So that's why I was like, well, where's the other book when I was done? I'm like, okay, so it's a series, so you'll be coming out with more.
Right. So the next book is going to be called Being Okay and Being Okay with Not Being Okay.
Perfect title. Love that.
So I'm working on that right now. But at the same time, so going back to like what's in the book, so we have this definition of humility. And one thing that I like to also point out is the humility equation, which is that happiness is better than money, because people say that they want money in order to be happy. Right?
Yeah.
And you find out that a lot of times when people have a lot of money, they're not happy.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's what they say. So happiness is better than money, and humility is better than happiness alone, because humility will make you happy, but at the same time will make you a better person to both God and to other people. And it's funny because we really value humility in the people that we meet and that we work with. But at the same time, society, you don't see anything valuing humility, right?
Yeah, everyone's boasting. That's why I did your boasting.
So it's an interesting thing. So anyway, we go from that discussion of humility and why it's so important and why it will really bless you, because it grounds you. It makes you into a loving person, and it helps you to focus on. So I say that there are two basic questions that society has us asking ourselves. One is, what can I get out of life, and am I getting enough? And what do other people think of me?
Interesting.
And these things are designed to get us to go out and buy things. And I don't think that they come from a bunch of old men sitting in a smoked room with, swigging Jack Daniels, and just deciding, okay, we're going to make them do that. It comes about naturally through consumerism. And so, we have these ideas. And I think we need to tweak those and say, instead, what can I give to life? And am I giving enough? And also, instead of what do other people think of me, what does God think of me?
Yeah, I think that's most important.
And if you don't believe in God, at least what do I think of me, rather than what do other people think of me?
Yeah, no, I'm a firm believer in God. I've come on the show. I love God. Jesus is my Savior. And it's definitely like, I do find, like, not only what I can do for others, but what does God want me to do?
Right.
And you have a chapter in here, I'll say a path in here, path 66, which is the path of obeying God.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, right? Which is that the whole, how much God is in the book, right? So the book is basically designed, I want people to become more humble, because that will make them happier. Yeah. And it'll also make them better people. So I want that to happen. And if they don't believe in God, and my first response or my first discussion about God is, well, you know that I'm a pastor. So, do you need to believe in God to be humble? And I say, well, not necessarily, but it couldn't hurt.
You know what I loved is you have, and I wrote it down. That's why I'm holding this paper, because on page 121, you talk about this, you have this story, and it really, for me, showed having that, that gift of being humiliated. Not humiliated. I'm going to be humiliated for saying that. But you talked about how when you play a game of chess, the king and the queen and the pawn at the end of the game, they all go back in the same box. They're treated equally. And I love that, because I'm like, I personally believe that. Like, I think we all came from the source. We've all come down. We all have our gifts. We're all going to do what our callings are. But at the end of the day, we're all returning the same way.
Right. Well, and that's actually just an Italian proverb. So, and it's interesting because you said the king and the queen go back in the same box, so you turned it into a feminist thing.
Oh.
But actually, it's the king and the pawn, meaning like even the littlest.
Yeah. Well, I said king, queen, and pawn.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Even like the littlest and the biggest. Right. Yeah. No matter how big you are, at the end of the day, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, go back into the same box.
I love that, and so each of the, and as you've written this, like, did you know you were going to come out with these 70 paths?
No.
So you just started writing them?
Yeah, it actually took me 10 years to write the book.
Wow.
And, there were times I went back and looked at my computer, and it says 9 months that I didn't touch it. Mm-hmm. You had to wait until it came to you. But I spent a lot of time thinking there's nothing like it. I mean, really, about humility. Yeah. Most of the books about humility are religious, and they have some stories about humility or in the Bible, but they don't go through this in sort of this scientific approach. My dad was a scientist.
Ah.
And so what I did was I started thinking about all of this and gathering all this information and coming up with these ideas and then figuring out, okay, and I came up with about 120 paths.
Wow.
But the other ones will go into these other books.
Wow. Yes. And the way you have each chapter, I'm going to call them chapters right now, but you have a story that you share a lot of times, like, and it's a personal story, whether you're talking about when you were golfing or having road rage, and, and you're sharing, a personal glimpse into your life that we can relate to. Then you bring it into a little bit more of, I'm going to use the word biblical, a little bit of a biblical sense, but because you're trying to show where the humility comes from and how to gain that, and then you have an exercise.
Right. So each one of those. So let me get back to finally the structure of the book. So we do the introduction where we're talking about what humility is, and we note also that. For instance, humility is something that people tend to get over time, right? So Mark Twain has this quote that he says, when I was 14, my father was an idiot, but when I was 21, I was amazed to see how much he'd grown in 7 years.
Yeah, isn't that amazing with kids?
Right. So of course the joke is that he grew in 7 years much more than his father probably did, because he went from 14 to 21 and his perspective changed. And I know too that there's a lot of commonality between what I do and what AA does with its 12 steps. In fact, AA founder Bill Wilson says that the key to overcoming addiction is humility. But it's interesting because the people in it's hard to get people in AA to buy into the book sometimes, or at least the organization, because everything's supposed to be anonymous. And I tried to get them to, promote the book, and they said no, they wouldn't do that because we just don't believe in that. Which is a shame, because it could be really useful especially for people who, and I know people who are in AA groups who find it really valuable. So anyway, after that section about what humility is and a definition of it, and why it's so important, there's a section about why we're so far away from it as a society. And then after that section, there's the 70 paths, and that's the meat of the book.
Yes.
And it starts out, the first 16 paths are really good for helping you get along with people. Things like recognizing other people are other me's. Recognizing that if you had been through the exact same thing that they'd been through and had their DNA, you would be behaving the same way that this person that's getting on your last nerves is. And, that helps you relax and say, okay, maybe I don't have to be mad at them. And the paths of forgiving, paths of, not judging. One of the things I really like about the not judging is, I've got, I think, 5 different paths on reasons not to judge others. And, that doesn't mean that you don't evaluate. Right. But not judging is more like condemning and condemnation. And the one I like the best that always gets to me is this. Even if you're correct that you're more spiritually advanced than the person you're dealing with, they may be living up to their potential more than you're living up to yours.
Yes.
So it could be that they're a 2, but they're acting like a 4. And it could be that you're a 7, but you should be a 9. So that humbles me and reminds me that, I may be further along in my spiritual journey, but I may not be living up to my potential, given what God has put into me.
No, and everyone is at their potential where they're supposed to be at that time.
That's
we were all at the exact potential at all the time. That's the one thing I love about the world, is that there's so much diversity, because if we were all the same, it'd be a boring place. So when you have all these different personalities and, all this stuff, it makes you humble to say, I'm not the most important person in the world. God has created everybody in his image. So it's like, wow, they're in their image. They're in their image. That's the story you had about the road rage it was a good story, because I try to do this. So if someone's having, road rage on the road, well, first I'll make a little joke that, it doesn't make me want to drive faster if you're tailgating me. It makes me want to see what your insurance policy's like. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, like if I'm with someone in the car, they're like, oh, look at that guy, he's driving terrible, and what a jerk, can I say that? I don't know. Beep that word out. But like sometimes I will literally say, oh, they must be rushing to the hospital. Their father's on their last breath.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Do you know what I mean? Like trying to think why they would be in such a hurry, like why they might be angry in their car, or, trying to think about that. And then I try to do this. Sometimes I do get a little upset, but I just try to say a prayer for them. Like, I hope he makes it in time. I hope he gets there safely. But on the other hand, it's like, I want everyone to drive safe, but it's another twist on that road rage, and it does give you a sense of humility instead of judging someone to saying, well, why do you think they might be doing that? And like you said, when you hear someone's journey of what they've gone through, then you resonate a little bit more and you understand why they might be that 4 or they're 7 or where they are on their spiritual level, their journey in life, or whatever it is. So it's very telling about how your book is written, because you have these paths that you don't have to necessarily follow in order. Like you don't have to read the book in two.
That's it's the book. I have it on as an audio book as well, and as a print version. But I like people to get the print version, because what you really want to do with this book is, if there's 3 out of those 70 paths that really resonate with you right now, and they're really things that you want to be remembering.
Yeah.
Right? You dog ear those and you go back to them and you read those again. And some people have said that they've read a book several times.
Yeah.
I've had great responses to the people that have bought the book or that I've given it to. I use it in my psychotherapy. So, it can be a great thing to help you with sort of anxiety and depression.
Definitely.
It's just these 70 paths, right? They're mental happiness tools, and they're ways of looking at at life differently. And some of them will resonate with somebody, and some of them will resonate with someone else.
Yeah.
It'll be, and that's how it is.
So I want to talk about some of the appendixes that you have
Sure.
in here, because I think it's very cool. Like I am a fan of having them in there. And one thing I'll share is, in my book, An Angel's Journey, I have the prayer, the Desiderata, and you have it in yours. And I was like, oh, we have the same prayer in our book.
Right.
Was it difficult? Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. Where did you get this published?
So this is actually self-published.
Okay.
But it's available, we're going to talk about that later, but it's available on Amazon.
Okay.
And
it's because the reason why I asked is, when I was publishing this, it came back that, like, I think it was through the Library of Congress. Like, if you're using quotes from another book, you have to make sure you have your sources and things like that. And when putting the Desiderata in, it definitely kind of pulled it back a little bit, because I needed to get a little, I had to put in that it was written by Max Efron. I think that's the...
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, please, brain, come up with it. So it's like you have to make sure you have... Thank you, Ehrman. Thank you. You have to make sure you have that in there. That's why I didn't know if you had, if it bounced back to you when you were self-publishing that you didn't...
No. It's interesting too that these are actually both in the I forget what the name of it is, but they're both in the public access.
Yes.
In other words, you, because they've been around so long,
yes,
you don't have to pay somebody to put it in your book. Do It Anyway is a poem by supposedly attributed originally to Mother Teresa,
yes,
but apparently was written by a guy named Kent M. Keith. But Mother Teresa may have added the last verse.
Yeah, I have this in a huge painting that hangs in my kitchen, and I love it. And Mother Teresa and I, we're very tight. I've actually got to visit her shelter that she has in Vatican City, and I got to be in her bedroom, and I touched her bed, and I sat at her desk, and
so she is so impressive to me, because it turns out that she had many times that she felt distant from God.
Talk about humility.
For me, I'm always connected with God. Like every morning I pray, and I spend 30 minutes reading devotionals, reading some Psalms, and I have to do that every morning or I'm not the same person. She was able to be who she was and still be very distant from God. And I don't know why God did that, but she was distant from him. And that just impressed me all the more.
Yeah, me too. I mean, there's been quotes where she'd say, I don't really know if there's a God, but I just need to do this work.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, and it's like, wow, she saw that she saw Jesus in people, and she was like, if they're suffering, I want to help them. I want to, take that suffering from them. And it was like, just such a beautiful heart, kind soul, and such a dedicated passion that she had for someone who wasn't sure,
Well, it's wonderful because
doubted.
I'm doing, preaching a sermon this coming Sunday, and it's Matthew 25, verses like 34 through 45. And it's the story of Jesus when he becomes the king, the king of the universe. The question is, he tells somebody, when I was poor, you gave me food. When I was sick, you helped me.
Yeah.
And it's all about, and the person says, well, when did I do that to you, Lord?
Yeah.
And he goes, as you've done to the least of me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, going out and, spending time feeding the homeless.
Right.
Right. And, if it's not that we're saved by works,
Mm-hmm.
but our works should reflect our faith.
Yeah. And our works do help. I want to say help save others also when you don't even know. I mean, even like when I talked about the road rage, like the person in the car next to you who's just having a really bad day, and and it's been me, in the car crying, having a bad day, and you just look over and they smile at you, and all of a sudden it just changes your whole perspective, and it's like, what are they so happy about? And of course, I smile back. They don't need to know why I'm, having this moment in my car, but it's like sometimes there's just those little small acts of kindness.
Well, one thing that I find a lot is that if you see somebody and they're being a little bit rude to you, maybe at a or they're not, they seem in a bad mood, and you ask them, and they're serving you in some way, like you're at a grocery line or something, and you say, how are you doing? And it just changes them like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm having a bad day, and they start opening up and talking to you. So that's sort of
as a psychotherapist, you know how important it is to talk, because when people keep that inside, it festers and it keeps going. And all of a sudden, when someone asks you, I'm having a bad day, and I got up, my car didn't start, whatever, and they share it verbally, it sometimes can disappear. Like
exactly.
It releases from their body, and it gets rid of the tension that they were holding.
Yeah.
And they're, and you walk away and they're probably like, I'm so glad that guy asked about my day. What I was saying before is you have the appendixes, and this one here, literally, you're on page 195. You have each path right here. So, and the exercises that you've given in each chapter. So it's such a great, for writers, writing prompts. Seriously, you have, and I'm just going to read, I'm going to read another one later, but exercise, 1, reflect on the ways you are making life all about you. How could you remind yourself that while you have an important role to play in other people's lives, you are not the center of their universe? It's such just a reflection to have silently. It's a perfect morning reflection, evening reflection. Great writing exercise for someone who is working on a book, and it might not even be something that I'm going to suggest as an author you don't do about yourself personally. You might have a character answer that. If you're writing fiction, that would be kind of a fun thing to do. But you also you have the poems that we talked about in here for inspiration, but you have recommended spiritual readings. You just give a lot of resources. It's really helpful to have those resources. Did you know you were going? I kind of want to say that you must have used those resources yourself. But did you know you were going to include those resources in there, and why did you?
Well, because I wanted to make, the word practical comes up, right? I want to make this book something that, it points to other things that can enrich someone's life. Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm particularly like The Untethered Soul. I mentioned that a number of times in the book. And I visited the guy who wrote that book, The Untethered Soul, and he has a sort of a temple in Gainesville, Florida. And he's a fascinating guy. So it was really, it was nice to be able to include, his book, because his book meant a lot to me. Reading outside of the Bible, reading The Untethered Soul made the most difference in my life in terms of how I look at things. And, he focuses on things like how we are not the voice in our head because we hear the voice, so we can't be the voice. So that's where his starting point is. But he's a spiritual teacher, and he's pretty deep. So that was one thing. One thing I'd like to read, though, is somebody's this one quotation that I got, and so in the back there's also a list of quotations, and these quotations are just something you can make a copy and put on your refrigerator.
I feel like I'm going to see them in front of the Algonquin Congregational Church on some board.
I probably should, but this is the one that blew my mind.
Okay, yeah.
Because this one is coming from a concentration camp victim.
Oh.
And she left this behind. And I say she because it was a women's concentration camp in Germany.
Okay.
And this is what she left behind somehow. I don't know if she wrote it on the wall or what. But it says, "O Lord, remember not only the men and women of goodwill, but all those of ill will. But do not remember all the suffering they have inflicted upon us. Remember the fruits we have bought thanks to this suffering, our comradeship, our loyalty, our humility, our courage, our generosity, the greatness of heart which has grown out of all this. And when they come to judgment, let all the fruits we have borne be their forgiveness."
Wow.
So if she can forgive them, who am I not to forgive somebody who insulted me?
Yeah, that's kind of upsets my stomach. That.
Sorry.
but I'm thinking about concentration camps and what she went through, but at the same time, the humility that she has and the forgiveness that she has and the love. So, yeah, beautiful. So, you read that quote, which inspired you, but now you have people leaving you reviews online and writing reviews, which is wonderful because it's such a great way to promote your book. And, Colette Anderson wrote a beautiful review talking about, how your writing is so clear and engaging. And, it just, as I've been saying, it helps you to reflect on your own attitudes. And she said, if you're looking for an insightful read that will help you develop your humility, it's not all about you is the read. So it's so great when somebody reads the book and markets it to other people, because marketing it, as you know, is difficult.
Yes.
Writing is one thing, publishing is another thing, and then writing, getting some people to market it and say, hey, this is a good book, read it.
Yes, it's a wonderful thing, and I mean I get so many strokes in my life right now. It's as a pastor, you preach a good sermon and people tell you how wonderful it is and they love you, and the trick is to not get a big head.
Right. Stay right here. Keep reading this every day.
You gotta stay humble, because when you're humble, you're grounded, you're relaxed, you're appreciating everything. When you get a big head and people get famous and stuff, a lot of times they become famous because they're insecure, and then they become famous and then it's never enough. Right. And it's they just need all this attention all the time, and that's not where you want to be. And you want to develop your relationship with God or your higher power, so that you really want to look to Him to be the one who gives you the validation.
Absolutely.
And not so much other people, but I must say I love it. It's great that when people say great things about my book, I really appreciate that. But at the same time, I don't want my ego to become, as big as a state.
And a lot of times writers, when we are writing, we sometimes have to give ourselves that ego, give ourselves that confidence of saying, I can do this and, get it done. But it, even though it's an individual project and it's a lonely project, sometimes, writing it, once you share it, it starts, to become more than, what it just was to us privately.
Right, and I'll tell you sort of the journey as far as like publishing goes. I originally put it out as an audiobook. And, I went through I wrote the book.
Did you record it in a studio or did you record? Okay.
Yep, I wrote the book and then I went to a studio and recorded the book. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to get a publisher, and it had been 10 years, as I said, since I started the book, and the publishing industry had changed. And I thought, you write a really good book, and then you get an agent, and then you get, a publisher, and then that's how it goes. But it turns out that to write a nonfiction book nowadays, you have to have some kind of platform if you want to get it published. In other words, they're more concerned with how many people you have on Facebook that are following
100%. It's crazy.
And it is crazy.
They don't care really about the content of the book. They care about the followers.
Obviously, somewhat they care about the content, but they mostly want the followers because they want to be able to sell the book.
They want the money. Yep,
and really what people don't realize who are not in the business is that they they don't really promote the book that much. They want the author to promote the book.
100%.
Right. So they want you to come in with that, and I didn't have that. So I said, well, I'm going to, what I found out is if I self-published, it was going to be hard to get a regular publisher, or harder.
Yep.
And but I was told that if I did an audiobook, that would be okay and that wouldn't get in the way. So I did the audiobook, and then I tried to get on social media, and I got, a few hundred followers or whatever, but it never got to the point where I had tens of thousands.
Yeah.
And that's what apparently I needed. And then I said, you know what, I'm just going to self-publish the book. And I did that, and I had this woman, Jane Friedman. She has a list of different things,
she's amazing.
Different people that can help you. Like the cover turned out to be really nice. I don't know if you can see that.
You have all the leaves.
It's just beautiful, and so
the different shades.
So I talked and I kind of see those as like the different paths to humility.
Yeah.
And it just anyway. Jane Friedman, she's an expert on publishing. And she will give you like a sheet for free.
Yep.
That will tell you about different people who you can help you with different things. And one of the things was to do the cover. And then it turned out that I thought, okay, now I'm going to do the print version. That's going to be a slam dunk because I've already written it. And then it turns out that you have to actually spend a lot of time and a little bit of money getting somebody to help you do the inside of the book to make it look nice.
Formatting, yes.
Right, and formatting. So, then you'd go with them, and then they'd send it to you, and you'd proof it, and then you'd send it back to them. And it wasn't easy, but at the same time, you think self-publishing isn't the same as regular publishing, but in some ways...
It's similar because you're marketing the same way.
Right. And not only that, but I mean, nowadays, because I had gone through 2 times where I had started books, but I had written like book proposals earlier on in my life. And it's like this time I was like, no way am I going to not make this a book.
Yeah.
And, the joy that I get from giving this book away, I get people to come to my church because I give the book to them.
Wow.
I get, people to read the book, and I don't have to be there with them helping them.
Yeah.
I can just give them this nugget that I've created that's going to blow up in their minds and create a difference in them.
I think it'd be a good Bible study book, a book to use in a Bible study.
And like you mentioned, you said about it could be like a daily devotional, right? So one day, I probably will write a daily devotional. I've got 70 there. I've got another 50. So if I can turn that into, 365, I can make a daily devotional.
I love the passion. I love the drive. We're going to keep going.
Or what I'd like to do is make, and somebody's actually working on creating an app using this with like really digging down into a few of the paths and talking about all the different ways you could use exercises with it. And I'm thinking of creating courses and all of that. But all of that is kind of on hold now because I just started being the pastor full-time at Agawam Congregational Church, and I've had to hold off on the promotional part.
No, I totally understand. But like you said, self-publishing, kind of is the way everybody's going right now. Number one, it's, quicker than doing traditional publishing. You have to wait for them.
You don't have to wait.
There is an investment, like you said. You do need good editors. You need good proofreaders. You need people to help you format the book, and then later you need people to help market the book too. So there is that expense. Traditional publisher definitely would take care of some of that, not necessarily the marketing end of it, but they definitely, there's good and bad with both. But if you really want to get your book out, then
but it's hard to get a traditional publisher.
It's very difficult, and they only take so many per year.
Right.
And like you said, they're really going to go after the people who have the followers.
Right.
So, where can people get this book? Where can they hear your audiobook, and where can they buy this book?
So the audiobook is available on Audible and also on some other platforms. If you look at you can go to my website, which is DanielAaronCohen.com. And that'll help you. But also, Amazon has the book, so that's where most people get it. Barnes & Noble has an agreement with me that if somebody orders the book at any Barnes & Noble, they can get the book there.
Nice.
If they prefer.
Yep.
But it's not in the stores.
Yeah, I have the same
regularly.
thing, yeah. I'm on the Barnes & Noble website, but not in their stores. But if you request it, they get it for you. So it is interesting how you have to figure all that out as an author. So, but, you know, this has been very informative, I think, for a lot of the writers and readers out there. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
All right.
And I want to thank you, the listening audience, for tuning into yWrite every week. And, you know, hopefully this has been yet another episode where you're inspired to figure out, you know, what you might be able to share with the world, however you're going to share it, whether you're going to write a book or give a speech or write a memoir or just like a couple letters to your family. This is the time in the program I want to give you a writing prompt. And I'm actually taking a writing prompt from Daniel Cohen's book, which is from Path 20. And I think this will be a really fun one. It's the path of comparing ourselves to others who gave more. And, you know, right now, especially in this time, you know, and we've been talking about, you know, in the news, you talk about Charlie Kirk and all these things. And there are people who are spiritual giants. And I want you to ask yourself, in what small way could you be more like them? And what the writing prompt is make a list of these giants in your life, you know, whether it's spiritual, whether it's, you know, if you're a basketball player and, you know, you have a idol that, you know, a great basketball player, write down what they have that, you know, you could mirror. And, you know, some way, in a small or big way, how can you mirror what they're doing? And, you know, it just kind of will humble yourself to say, you know, I want to be more like them because I'm not, you know, it's not all about me. It's not all about you. So again, thank you for tuning into yWrite. Happy writing. Go set your timer for 10 minutes, and I will see you the next show. Have a great day. See ya.